Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next matriarchal sermon in honor of Mother's Day today. I am talking about mothers in a matriarchy. So the title of today's video is, What is a Matriarchal Mother? And I will be doing some readings from books and having a discussion. The discussion will be in depth of the philosophy and also personal experience as a mother from a physical point of view and also an archetypal point of view. So stay tuned. There's lots of great discussion on that. If you saw my little teaser that I did earlier this week, asking what is a mother, I pointed out three things that I believe a matriarchal mother is, and they are provide, guide, and align. So I'll talk about those as well. And also the images that I showed at the beginning of the video. What did you think about those? I collected them in my years of study of history and feminism and spirituality and healing trauma. And I saved ones that I really like. And I created an album of sorts about those images. So what do you think about them? The one that really speaks to me, there's two of them that really speak to me. One is the woman on the cross with the blood running down her legs. As we all know, menstruation is how motherhood occurs. Yet such a startling image to see, because I think it is so true that women and mothers are put on the cross. They're crucified in so many ways in everyday life. And to see an image like that, I think can almost border on obscene because of how raw and real it really is to real life, as opposed to the image of Jesus Christ on a cross. A man who was nailed there and who sacrificed himself for the salvation of others, whereas the woman on the cross with the blood running down her legs, she sacrifices herself for her children, but society sacrifices her without her consent. I think it's kind of neat. Anyways, we're not going to it's not a totally dark session. There is a lot of good coming through this session, as well as some of the dark stuff, because the matriarchal mom is not all sunshine and rainbows, although it is lots of sunshine and rainbows. It's also the nitty-gritty, because I can't think of a more deep and profound job than it is to create life and raise it. There is no, wow, just wow. It is such a job. So yeah, let's get into it, shall we? Our first reading is from my matriarchal holy Bible. I've read from this before in other matriarchal sermons, the Great Cosmic Mother. And this book refers to the universe as our cosmic mother, and then Mother Earth as our earthly mother, and who birthed us and created us, and then also talks about woman and female species, so of the animal species and of the plant queendom, how how motherhood, how the act of motherhood is the act of God. And so this is a really good book. I'm reading today from the chapter called The First Mother, and I will show you the picture. This is an early picture depicting the act of birth, the act of life, the act of goddess. And it is a rock drawing of a woman giving birth from Shahib Sama in Yemen. Pretty cool. All right, so the first mother. Biology is not destiny, but like the sea, it is a beginning. The mysteries of the female biology dominated human religious and artistic thought, as well as social organization for at least the first 200,000 years of human life on Earth. The first human images known to us are the so-called Venuses found in Upper Paleolithic remains, 35,000 to 10,000 BC. From the way these statues are positioned and located in cave hearths, niches, and graves, they are interpreted as cult images, the mother guardians of the daily life, death, and rebirth of the people. These Venuses, carved from stone, bone, and ivory, and shaped from clay, are very fleshy, more or less stylized to represent pregnancy and abundance. Though named after Venus, the Roman goddess of love, they are no longer seen by archaeologists as Cro-Magnon bunnies. Let me say that sentence again. Though named after Venus, the Roman goddess of love, they are no longer seen by archaeologists as Cro-Magnon bunnies. They are not sex objects. They are magic images in the mysterious power of female to create life out of herself and to sustain it. The statues have no feet. The legs taper to a point so that they could stick upright in the soft earth or niche. They were placed everywhere. The mysterious power of the female to create life out of herself and to sustain it. Mother, God. In matriarchy, it's one and the same. These statues appear in Europe with the appearance of the Cro-Magnons, but much earlier during the Neanderthaloid period, dating from at least 200,000 BC, evidence shows that great magical power was attributed to the earth as mother of life and death. Neanderthals buried their dead, curled in fetal positions, painted red. Bones were painted with red ochre. Analogically, the dead were to re-enter the earth, the tomb, the womb, to be reborn again. A Neanderthal corpse found in Shanider Cave in northern Iraq has been laid to rest on pine boughs and strewn with wild flowers. Even earlier than this, a remarkable find at La Farassy in the French limestone country shows a beautiful resonance that was felt in the minds and hearts of these earliest people between life, death, and the mother. In the rock shelter, a child's grave was found covered with a large stone slab. On the underside of this slab, small cupfuls had been scooped out. These were all in pairs to symbolize the woman's breasts. The breast-shaped cupule markings were made throughout prehistory. They were found over great areas of outcropped rock in Europe. But on this stone slab in France, covered a Neanderthal child's grave in which they first appear. Marassia al-Iliad the great student of Aboriginal religious symbolism and shamanism, speaks of a primary intuition of the earth as religious form. The earth was seen by all primal people as a source of nourishment, protection, power, and the mystery of cyclic recurrence. Perhaps the first human analogy made was between the earth and the female, who perform the same functions on an individual level. Especially awesome was a woman's ability to bleed rhythmically with the moon's phases and her periodic swelling up and dramatic expulsion of new being. Paintings of the mother giving birth with the expulsed child still connected to her via the umbilical cord are found throughout the Cro-Magnon caves. Childbirth is a powerful drama and ritual. To imagine the enormous impact of pregnancy and childbirth on our human ancestors, we have to remember that the Paleolithic people, like many Aboriginal people today, did not know the connection between intercourse and pregnancy. The male role might have been seen as opening the womb, but the pregnancy itself was seen as a result from the magical intercourse between mother and the spirit world, or it was seen as a parthenogenetic act, the woman as spontaneous and autonomous creator of life. The earth, I'm reading this again, the earth was seen by all primal people as a source of nourishment, protection, power, and the mystery of cyclic reoccurrence. Perhaps the first human analogy was made between the earth and the female, who perform the same functions on an individual level. Isn't that really cool? I look back at how we celebrated motherhood and the divine act that it is, 200,000 years ago, and how we see motherhood today in our modern patriarchal society. And we have lost, or we have diluted or convoluted or confused the act of nourishment, protection, power, and mystery of cyclic recurrence, especially the last one. I mean, nature is all about cycles, and womanhood is about cycles, and motherhood is about cycles. Yet our society is so hell-bent on a linear way of life, which goes against all laws of nature. In the patriarchal look of motherhood today, what do you think? What do you think of the matriarchal view of nourishment, protection, power, and the mystery of cyclic recurrence, and today's patriarchal view of motherhood? What do you think? Write in the comments. How they differ, how are they the same, how are they celebrated, how are they not celebrated? It's all quite fascinating. Childbirth is a powerful drama and ritual. Do we still see it as a ritual, a powerful drama and ritual today? I think we do in a sense. But I think we lost some of the divinity of it, haven't we? Women lie on their backs, open themselves up to the doctor in the room, who at first was male, while he sits comfortably in a seat. And then she gives birth, lying supine on her back, which goes against the whole idea of gravity assisting the birth. And then they're taken away and the umbilical cord is cut right away. instead of it remaining like it used to in order to continue providing the nutrients to the infant until the infant receives everything it needs to receive from the umbilical cord, and then it naturally falls off. And then the baby is cleaned as opposed to left with the juices of the placenta, the juices of mother, in order to protect her in her early infancy of life. And it's cleaned up and sanitized. Like, why does childbirth have to be sanitized? And why do we have to cut the umbilical cord so quickly? And then wrapped up in a towel, and then to go weighed and sometimes vaccinated right away, as opposed to given into the mother's arms and then just have it sit there. That should be the very first thing. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. For as long as the baby and the mother need it. And then at some point, the baby is taken away so the mother can rest. And the mother's rest is important, but the baby shouldn't be taken away. It's just the whole act, instead of celebrating the divinity of what's happening, becomes sanitized. Kind of sad. I'd like to see it go back to the way it was. In these cave drawings of childbirth and in the Venus statues, as well as in many images of gravid animals, the fertility of earth and woman was imaged and celebrated as a spiritual magical act to ensure the year's abundance of game and fruit. The seasonal return of vegetation and young animal life following winter and apparent death gave early humans the idea of magical cyclical rebirth of their own kind. Entombments, whether cave graves or the later underground vaults and collective burial mounds, were ways of returning bodies to the womb of Mother Earth, where they are waited for rebirth. And then later megalithic porthole tombs, holes were laboriously chiseled out of the portal slabs at the grave entrance to stimulate the birth canal opening. Even later in Egypt, the overarching sky goddess Nut was painted on the inside of coffin lids. This is a lovely echo of that first stone slab placed over the Neanderthal grave, with the mother's breast protecting, covering, nourishing the dead child as it is waited to be reborn. Death is the powerful dramatic mystery equal to birth, and both are overarched and contained in the Great Mother. The concept of a female earth as a source of cyclic birth, life, death, and rebirth underlies all mythological and religious symbology. It is a source of all religious belief. It is important to grasp the time dimension involved. God was female for at least the first 200,000 years of human life on Earth. This is a conservative estimate. Women images of Mother God were doubtless carved long before the stone Cro-Magnon Venuses, but wood does not survive. And long before those first breast shapes were carved in the Neanderthal grave slab, where the red ochred bodies were placed fetal position in the cave earth, the idea, the symbolic image, the resonant analogy preceding all icons, were in the minds and hearts of our earliest ancestors. In the world's oldest creation myths, the female god creates the world out of her own body. The Great Mother everywhere was the active and autonomous creatrix of the world, and unlike the aloof and self-righteous patriarchal gods who only recently usurped her mountain throne, the ancient goddess was always there, alive, immanent within her creation. No ontological scapegoater. She was wholly responsible for both the pain and the good of life. She was wholly responsible for both the pain and the good of life. That's my dog snoring, by the way. I hope you can tune it out. I'm not going to wake her up. She's sleeping peacefully. She was wholly responsible for the pain and the good of life. And that's something that in our patriarchal society, whether it is just people as a whole, mothering our young, caring for the sick, teaching others, spiritual celebrations, whatever it may be, patriarchy, ironically, or maybe unconsciously, I think unconsciously would be a better word, creates so much death and pain, won't take responsibility for it, and denies its existence while trying to prevent it from ever happening. There is so much dissociation and delusion and denial of pain and death that not acknowledging it is what perpetuates it. There's an old saying that says, what you resist persists. And that's exactly how the patriarchy works. It resists everything and persists everything. And the matriarchy, the great mother, understands and appreciates the good and the bad, the pain and the pleasurable, and awakens herself, gives herself the responsibility of the task of understanding and working with it in our life, and understanding the growth, death, rebirth cycle, understanding all of that life is. And with that responsibility, with that awareness, and with the act of responsibility of life and of motherhood in it, she can create a world, she can create a generation where we can flow through the pain of life with an ability, with a resilience to deal with it. I think that's a really important act of motherhood. To be able to teach our next generation to have the resilience and the grit of the pain and the death. And to also teach them that with every pain, with every death, there's a rebirth. And I'm not just talking about the final death where we lose our physical life and then, put in the ground. I'm talking about everyday death, the death of old patterns, the death of old belief systems, the death of grief and painful emotions, the death of loved ones, the death of illness, the death of old resistances in our psyche, the death of past traumas. To be able to be resilient and process it and be with it creates a rebirth in ourselves for the next phase of our life. And that's a really, really important act, I think, of motherhood. The matriarchs knew how to do that. Yeah, really cool. So that was from the Great Cosmic Mother, talking about motherhood as sort of the whole divine process of it, as opposed to the individual act of motherhood, which is just as important. I'm talking more of a grand scale of things. I'm also going to read from this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, The Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype. This is my second Bible. I am always referring to this book. I think Clarissa Pinkola Estes is one of the greatest storytellers of all time. She has a gift with words. Oh, it's just beautiful. And if you ever have a chance to listen to her audio books, it comes out vocally as well, the way she tells a story and the way she teaches. It's just, this is her goddess given talent. It's really impressive. So, the chapter I'm reading from here is called Finding One's Pack, Belonging as Blessing. And I'm going to read bits and pieces of it in regards to her view of motherhood and the wild women, which is something I think mothers today have really been brainwashed out of. We perform the act of motherhood without our instinctual wild woman nature that was given to us from Mother Nature to be the great mother, the protective mother, the nourishing mother, the powerful mother, all that's said in the first book here. It's part of being a wild woman. And women today, every time we show a bit of wildness, we're put on psych drugs. Or we get cast stones by the patriarchal religions in deeply religious societies. Or we will get abused by those deep in domestic violence. And then it's been happening since the dawn of the patriarchy, which is about 10,000 years old, give or take. And so we've lost thousands and thousands of years of reclaiming our instinctual wild woman mother in order to live as women and to live as mothers to serve the girls of the next generation. So, finding one's pack, belonging as blessing. All right. Sometimes life goes wrong for the wildish woman from the beginning. Many women had parents who surveyed them as children and puzzled over how this small alien had managed to infiltrate the family. Other parents were always looking heavenward, ignoring or abusing the child or giving her old icicle eye. I'm getting a little dark here, but it ends good, I promise. Let women who have had this experience take heart. You have avenged yourself by having been, through no fault of your own, a handful to raise and an eternal thorn in their sides. And perhaps even today you're able to inspire them to abject fear when you come a knockin'. That's not too shabby as innocent retribution goes. See it too now that you spend less time on what they didn't give you and more time on finding the people you belong to. You may not belong to your original family at all. You may match your family genetically, but temperamentally you may belong to another group of people. Or you may belong to your family perfunctorily, but while your soul leaps out, runs down the road, and is gluttonously happy munching spiritual cookies somewhere else. Hans Christian Andersen wrote dozens of literary stories about the children who were orphans. He was a premier advocate of the lost and neglected child, and he strongly supported searching for and finding one's own kind. His rendering of The Ugly Duckling was first published in 1845. The ancient motif underlying the tale is all about the unusual and the dispossessed, a perfect wild woman demi-history. For the last 2 centuries, The Ugly Duckling has been one of the few stories to encourage successive generations of outsiders to hold on till they find their own. It is what I would call a psychological and spiritual root story. A root story is one that contains truths so fundamental to human development that without integration of this fact, further progression is shaky, and one cannot entirely prosper psychologically until this point is realized. So here is The Ugly Duckling, that I wrote as a literary story based on the eccentric version originally told in the Magyar language by the Falusias Meselok, rustic tellers from my family. Excuse my my English, I'm not great with other languages. All right, so The Ugly Duckling. And I would like you to see this story from a wild woman perspective, from a motherhood perspective, and also a perspective of motherhood, even when it's not genetically done. So just the act of mothering, the archetype of mothering, and also a patriarchal view of what mothering is. So just keep an open mind and see what comes up in your head as I read the story. And you probably know it well, but I like rereading old stories. Okay. The Ugly Duckling. It was near the time of harvest. The old women were making green dolls from corn sheaves. The old men were mending the blankets. The girls were embroidering their white dresses with blood-red flowers. The boys were singing as they pitched golden hay. The women were knitting scratchy skirts for the coming winter. The men were helping to pick and pull and cut and hoe the fruits the fields had brought forth. The wind was just beginning to loosen the leaves a little more, and then a little more each day. And down by the river there was a mother duck brooding on her nest of eggs. Everything was going as it should for this mother duck, and finally, one by one, her eggs began to tremble and shake until the shells cracked, and out staggered all her new ducklings. But there was one egg left, a very big egg. It just sat there like a stone. An old duck came by, and the duck mother showed off her new children. "Aren't they good looking?" she bragged. But the unhatched hen caught the old duck's attention, and she tried to dissuade the duck mother from sitting on that egg any longer. "It's a turkey egg," explained the old duck. "Not the proper kind of egg at all. Can't get a turkey into the water, you know." She knew, for she had tried. But the duck mother felt that she had been sitting for such a long time, a little longer would not hurt. "I'm not worried about that," she said. "But do you know that scoundrel father of these ducklings hasn't come to visit me once?" His tale is old as time. But eventually the big egg began to shudder and roll. It finally broke open, and out tumbled a big, ungainly creature. His skin was etched with curly red and blue veins. His feet were pale purple, his eyes transparent pink. The duck mother cocked her head and stretched her neck and peered at him. She couldn't help herself. She pronounced him ugly. Maybe it is a turkey after all, she worried. But when the ugly duckling took to the water with the other offspring, the duck mother saw that he swam straight and true. Yes, he's one of my own, even though he's very peculiar in appearance, but actually in the right light, he's almost handsome. So she presented him to the other creatures in the farmyard, but before she knew it, another duck shot across the courtyard and bit the ugly duckling right in the neck. The duck mother cried, "Stop!" But the bully sputtered, "Well, he looks so strange and ugly. He needs to be pushed around." And the queen duck with the red rag on her leg said, "Oh, another brood. As though we don't have enough mouths to feed. And that one over there, that big ugly one. Well, surely he was a mistake." "He's not a mistake," said the duck mother. "He's going to be very strong. He just laid in the egg too long and is yet a little misshapen. He'll straighten out, though. You'll see." She groomed the ugly duckling's feathers and licked his cowlicks. But the others did all they could to harass the ugly duckling. They flew at him, bit him, pecked him, hissed and screeched at him. And their torment of him grew worse as time went on. He hid, he dodged, he zigzagged left and right, but he could not escape. The duckling was miserable as any creature could be. At first his mother defended him, but then even she grew tired of it all and explained in exasperation, "I wish he would just go away." And so the ugly duckling ran away. With most of his feathers pulled out and looking extremely bedraggled, he ran and ran until he reached a marsh. There he lay down at the water's edge with his neck stretched out and sipped as he could from the water now and then. From the rushes 2 ganders watched him. They were young and full of themselves. "Say there, you ugly thing," they sniggered. "Want to come with us over to the next county? There's a gaggle of young unmarried geese over there, just right for the choosing." Suddenly shots rang out and the ganders fell with a thud and the marsh water ran red with their blood. The ugly duckling dived for cover and all around were shots and smoke and dogs barking. At last the marsh became quiet and the duckling ran and flew as far away as he could. Toward nightfall he came to a poor hovel. The door was hanging by a thread. There were more cracks than walls. Here lived an old raggedy woman with her uncombed cat and her cross-eyed hen. The cat earned her keep with the old woman by catching mice. The hen earned her keep by laying eggs. The old woman felt lucky to have found a duck. "Maybe it will lay eggs," she thought, "and if not, we can kill it and eat it." So the duck stayed, but he was tormented by the cat and the hen, who asked him, "What good are you if you cannot lay and you cannot catch?" "What I love best," sighed the duckling, "is to be under. Whether it is under the wide blue sky or under the cool blue water." The cat could not make sense of being underwater and criticized the duckling for his stupid dreams. The hen could make no sense of getting her feathers all wet, and she made fun of the duckling too. In the end, it was clear there would be no peace for the duckling there, so he left his things to see if things would be better down the road. He came upon a pond, and as he swam there, it became colder and colder. A flock of creatures flew overhead, the most beautiful he had ever seen. They cried down to him, and hearing their sounds made his heart leap and break at the same time. He cried back in a sound he had never made before. He had never seen creatures more beautiful than they, and he had never felt more bereft. He turned and turned in the water to watch them till they flew out of sight. Then he dove to the bottom of the lake and huddled there trembling. He was beside himself, for he felt a desperate love for those great white birds, a love he could not understand. A colder wind began and blew harder and harder through the days, and snow came upon frost. The old man broke the ice in the milk pails, and the old woman spun lawn into the night. The mothers fed 3 mills at once by candlelight, and the men searched for the sheep under white skies at midnight. The young men went waist deep in the snow to go milking, and the girls imagined they saw faces of handsome young men in the flames of the fire while they cooked. And down at the pond nearby, the duckling had to swim faster and faster in circles to keep a place for himself in the ice. One morning, the duckling found himself frozen in the ice, and it was then that he felt he would die. Two mallards flew down and skidded onto the ice. They surveyed the duck. "You are ugly," they barked. "Too bad, so sad. Nothing can be done for such as you." And off they flew. Luckily, a farmer came by and freed the ducklings by breaking the ice with his staff. He lifted the duckling up and tucked him under his coat and marched home. In the farmer's house, the children reached for the duckling, but he was afraid. He flew up to the rafters, making all the dust fall down into the butter. From there, he dove right into the milk pitcher, and he struggled out all wet and woozy, and he fell over into the flour barrel. The farmer's wife chased him with her broom, and the children screamed with laughter. The duckling flapped through the cat's door, and outside at last lay in the snow half dead. From there he struggled on till he came to another pond, and then another house, another pond, another house, and the entire winter was spent this way, alternating between life and death. And even so the gentle breath of spring came again, and the old women shook out the feather beds, and the old men put away their long underwear. New babies came into the night, while fathers paced the yard under starry skies. During daylight, the young girls put daffodils in their hair, and the young men studied girls' ankles. And on a pond nearby, the water became warmer, and the ugly duckling who floated there stretched his wings. How strong and big his wings were! They lifted him high over the land. From the air he saw the orchards in their white gowns, and the farmers plowing, the young of all the nature hatching and tumbling, buzzing and swimming. Also paddling on the pond were 3 swans, the same beautiful creatures he had seen the autumn before, those that so caused his heart to ache. He felt pulled to join them. What if they act as though they like me, and then just as I join them, they fly away laughing, thought the duckling. But he glided down, landed on the pond, and his heart beating hard. As soon as they saw him, the swans began to swim toward him. "No doubt I am about to meet my end," thought the duckling, "but I am to be killed, then rather by these beautiful creatures than by hunters, farm wives, or long winters." I'm going to read that part again. "No doubt I am to meet my end," thought the duckling, "but if I am to be killed, then rather by these beautiful creatures than by hunters, farm wives, or long winters." And he bowed his head to await the blows. But la! In the reflection in the water, he saw a swan in full dress, snowy plumage, slow eyes and all. The ugly duckling did not at first recognize himself, for he looked just like the beautiful strangers, just like those he admired from afar. And it turned out that he was one of them after all. His egg had accidentally rolled into a family of ducks. He was a swan, a glorious swan, and for the first time his own kind came near him and touched him gently and lovingly with their wing tips. They groomed him with their beaks and swam round and round him in greeting. And the children who came to feed the swans bits of bread cried out, "There's a new one!" And as children everywhere do, they ran to tell everyone. And the old woman came down to the water, unbraiding their long silver hair. And the young men cupped the deep green water in their hands and flicked it at the young girls who blushed like petals. The men took time away from milking just to breathe the air. The women took time away from mending just to laugh with their mates. And the old men told stories about how war is too long and life too short. And one by one, because of life and passion and time passing, they all danced away. The young men, the young women, all danced away. And the old ones, the husbands and the wives, they all danced away. And the children and the swans all danced away, leaving just us and the springtime. And down the river, another mother duck begins to brood on her nest of eggs. Such a cool story, isn't it? So what came to you while reading that story? I had a lot of things come to me. I had the idea of belonging and the act of mothering are both genetic and nurture and nature. The swans that took him in the end were not his original family, but they were alike, that they formed a bond and became a family. And isn't that like us exiled children who don't belong to our original family, who find like-minded people to have a family with? And those mothers who will adopt exiled children and love them as if they were their own. That's pretty cool. The act of mothering is so complex. And so deeply wounded. On the one hand, there's so much pressure and expectation for perfection of mothering. And then on the other end, there's the complete rebellion from anything feminine and anything even close to resembling motherhood, that we fall into patriarchy traps because we don't want to deal with the shame and the blame when we don't meet the expected standards. And within the flip-flop is all the trauma of 10,000 years of patriarchy pushed upon us that took away our natural instinct of motherhood and being a wild woman, that we continuously pass down into our next generation, our next daughters and granddaughters and great-granddaughters, because we haven't healed that wound. There's actually a term for it. It's called the mother wound. And if you go and research it, there's a lot of studies and there's a lot of research done behind it and how to heal it in regards to the unconscious pain that we bring into our fellow generations. There's also a lot of instinctual goodness that's still there, that's being suppressed, but still flies there. Like it just buzzes, you know, like the underground creeks. You dig the wells and there's the water. Well, the same thing. If we could dig through our conditioned stuff, the water, the instinctual wild woman mothering is still there. And this act of mothering, I'm talking as the physical act of mother and also the archetype of mother. So let me go into a bit into what the archetype of mothering is. And the archetype of mother is very much a resemblance, a reflection of how Mother Nature herself works. So it's not this stereotypical patriarchal view of mother where it's all self-servicing, it's all self-sacrificing, it's all self-pleasing, it's all all pure reproduction. It's all, we're nothing more than our uterus, but our reproductive organs. Where it's all, we become less than men because all we do is produce life instead of climbing the ladders of success and gaining power in this patriarchal world. It's not that. It is a reflection of how Mother Nature herself acts and how all the female species of Mother Nature acts. So all the wild animals, all the flora, the fauna, everything that works through Mother Nature. And then the great cosmic mother of how the universe works through itself and how it acts. So if you go out and you watch and you start to learn the natural laws of living, that's the archetype of mother. That's the matriarchal mother. And yes, it does involve the physical act of caring for another generation. And yes, it does involve reproducing. But it is not just that, and it is not looked at as something as a subset of what human is, a subset of what life is. It is looked at as the divine act of creation. And even if you don't physically have a kid, you still, as a woman, have the qualities of the archetype of mother if you are producing it through your projects, through your crafts, through social work, through caring for other animals, through tending to the earth, through justice and protection of the vulnerable, through whatever it is that calls you to create. And that is the basis of the archetype of motherhood, is to create. And to create is just a vast, wide area that can mean almost everything and anything. And this book here, she goes through it such depth. The archetype of mother, the archetype of wild woman, and how creativity comes from it. A must read. That is what a matriarchal mother is. The combination, the return to our wild woman ways, the return to the natural laws of Mother Nature and how they run through us as women, the return to seeing the act of mothering as divinity, not as simply machine reproduction, and to think about the three qualities of mothers, like I said in my little teaser, to provide, to guide, and to align. So to provide what we need to survive and thrive, to guide the next generation in understanding their instinctive wildness and creativity and divinity, and to align. To align means to align ourselves, other women, and humanity as a whole to return to the laws of nature and how we are supposed to live as humans on earth in a healthy and harmonious way, with the pain and the pleasure. So there is grit, there is pain, there is death, but there is no removal from the core sense of who we are as a sex, as a species, as an organism on what gives us life. When you remove the root, everything dies. Everything ceases to exist. And the only thing that can come from that is poison and toxicity. So aligning us, which I think is an important act of motherhood, whether it is from mom to daughter or whether it is as woman to woman, and also to women, to all humans at large, men and women, is to realign us back to the natural ways of living that we have evolved from. And that is one aspect that I think we have thoroughly forgotten in our patriarchal society. Instead, we do a lot of aligning with the patriarchal view of what a good mother is, a good woman is, a good human is, a good worker is, a good teacher is, a good doctor is, a good whatever. In a way, us awakening matriarchs here are the ugly ducklings struggling to find where we belong in our patriarchal world. And we need to find our swans. That's pretty cool. So that's just the first part of the chapter. The other parts of the chapter, she goes into the kinds of mothers. And I won't go into that today, but it's a very great read about the mother wounds of the types of mothers out there, and also the strong mother. So the strong mother, the strong child. This one I will read because I want to end on a good note. The remedy is in gaining mothering for one's young internal mother. The remedy is in gaining mothering for one's young internal mother. And this is the whole purpose of the mother wound therapy. Doing the work of finding your own internal mother to reparent your wounded child, if you have one. All right. This is gained from actual women in the outer world who are older and wiser, and preferably who have been tempered like steel. They are fire hardened for having gone through what they have gone through. Regardless of the cost, even now, their eyes see, their ears hear, their tongues speak, and they are kind. Even if you had the most wonderful mother in the world, you may eventually have more than one. As I have often told my own daughters, you are born to one mother, but if you are lucky, you will have more than one. And among them all, you will find most of what you need. Your relationships with todas las madres, the many mothers, will most likely be ongoing ones, for the need for guidance and advisory is never outgrown, nor from the point of view of women's deep creative life should it ever be. Relationships between women, whether women share the same bloodlines or are psychic soulmates, whether relationship is between analyst and Alisande, between teacher and apprentice, or between kindred spirits, are kinship relationships of the most important kind. While some who write in psychology today tout the leaving of the entire mother matrix as though it were a coup that, if not accomplished, taints one forever. And though some say that the denigration of one's personal mother is good for an individual's mental health, in truth, the construct and concept of the wild mother can never and should never be abandoned. For if it is, a woman abandons her own deep nature, the one with all the knowing in it, all the bags of seeds, all the thorn needles for mending, and all the medicines for work, rest, love, and hope. This is another part of the matriarchal mothering. In patriarchal societies, women were isolated from other women, put into nuclear marriages in order to care for the young on their own. Whereas in matriarchal societies, women raised children with other women because it's a hard task. I mean, it's an overwhelming task. And so it is quite normal to need help and to have a community to help you for times when you're weak, for times when you're tired, for times when you're ill, for times when you just had enough and you just need a break, to have other women there to help you. That is normal. And I'm not talking about a woman in another nuclear marriage who has to make time for servicing her husband's needs in order to help you. I'm talking about a mother in the same household, down the road, your own mother nearby, who would be like, yeah, I'm there. I'm there at 3 o'clock in the morning when you need me, that kind of thing. We've lost that. And then we wonder why women are so lonely and why mothers suffer from depression. Because there's no one there on a regular, consistent basis who can drop everything and be there for you at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're just on your knees. It's really sad. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have those again? And to update it into our global world, I mean, FaceTime is better than nothing, although I prefer the physical act. A phone call, a face meeting, all wonderful things. Rather than disengaging from the mother, we are seeking a wild and wise mother. We cannot be separate from her. Our relationship to the soulful mother is meant to turn and turn and to change and change, and it is a paradox. This mother is a school we are born into, a school where we are students in, a school we are teachers in at the same time and for the rest of our lives. Whether we have children or not, whether we nourish the garden, the sciences, or the thunder world of poetics, we always brush against the wild mother on our way to anywhere else. And this is as it should be. But what shall we say for the woman who truly has had an experience of destructive mothering in her own childhood? Of course, that time cannot be erased, but it can be eased. It can be sweetened up, but it can be rebuilt. I'll say it again. It cannot be sweetened up, but it can be rebuilt strongly and properly now. It is not the rebuilding of the internal mother that is so frightening to so many, but rather the fear that something essential died back then, something that can never be brought to life again, something that received no nourishment, for physically one's own mother was dead herself. For you, I say, be at peace. You are not dead. You are not lethally injured. For you, I say, be at peace. You are not dead. You are not lethally injured. As in nature, the soul and the spirit have resources that are astonishing. Like wolves and other creatures, the soul and spirit are able to thrive on very little and sometimes for a long time on nothing. To me, it is a miracle of miracles that this is so. Once I was transplanting a hedgerow of lilac. One great bush was dead from a mysterious cause, but the rest were shaggy with purple in springtime. The dead one cracked and crunched like peanut brittle, and I dug it out. I found that its root system was attached to all other living lilacs up and down the fence line. Even more astounding, the dead one was the mother. She had the thickest and oldest roots. All her big babies were doing fine, even though she herself was botas arribas, boots up, so to speak. Lilacs reproduce with what is called a sucker system, so each tree is a root offshoot of the primal parent. In this system, even if the mother fails, the offspring can survive. This is the psychic pattern and promise for those with little or no, as well as those who have torturous mothering. Even though the mother somehow falls over, even though she has nothing to offer, the offspring will develop and grow independently and still thrive. A little bit about me, if you're interested. I am not a mother. I am the mother archetype. I don't have any children. I decided way back in my early 20s, God, maybe even my teenage years, that I didn't want any children at all. I grew up from a mother who was extremely tortured and therefore tortured me. So, and I grew up in a family, a very misogynistic family, where the wild woman didn't exist because the women were severely abused. And we were nothing but service providers for the men in our family. So I viewed motherhood from the patriarchal sense of just a simple reproductive factory, and then I was going to be chained up to care for the young, and I would never have any freedom, and I would be even more trapped in a family where I was already trapped into. And I viewed women as horrible creatures. I wanted to act as masculine as possible. I thought all feminine qualities were weak qualities. I was young in the 80s and 90s. I was born in the 70s. If I was a young woman today, I would probably want to try and transition. Thank goddess I was not born today, or a young woman today. So yeah, I have a lot of mother wound issues. And it has ruptured my psyche, my body so deeply that I still have bouts of flare-ups. And this is after 8 years of deep therapy where I feel like I'm disappearing. So I understand the tortured mother, the patriarchal mother. And I would spend many, many, many dreams and working with my inner child on what a good mother is, what a matriarchal mother is. So I turn to books like these. I turn to spiritual guidance. I turn to studying feminism, matriarchy, and trauma, healing trauma. And I did my own internal mothering work. I still do it. I still have a ways to go. And I turned to the great mother, Mother Nature. And I just surrendered myself to her. And it was between the teachings, the literature, Mother Nature, and my own therapy that I have now come to a deep, deep passion and what I believe is the truth of what humanity is supposed to be and what womanhood is supposed to be and what divinity is supposed to be. And so now I look as motherhood as the act of being a god. I look at the matriarchal mother as being the wild woman guiding the next generation. I look at Mother Nature as our God and our teacher. And I look to the natural laws of living, not the man-made laws. And I find the more I dive into those, the more whole I become. The more I'm able to access my deepest wounds and heal them one by one at a time, like peeling a layer of an onion that has like 10,000 layers. The more I'm able to do it, the less dissociation I have. The less I fight myself with perfectionism and what I'm supposed to be or what I should be. And the more rested and calm I am within myself. And the more I trust myself, which is a big one, because women are told not to trust themselves. But if you can trust your own mother, Mother Nature, because you are her, the less that gets pulled. You're building roots so deep, as deep as the crust of Earth itself. Mine haven't reached that far yet, but that's my goal. That's my goal for all women. And the more, where was I going? The more assured I feel, more confident. I still have a ways to go. I still have wounds that flare up and take me down for a while. But every time I use my mother archetype and I use my wild woman and I use my divine guidance systems, I'm able to pull out the traumas more and more. And I'm able to mother others. And I don't mean in the sense of like, you know, how mothers mother their kids. That's an act that I have no experience with. But mother as the archetype. And there's many mothering archetypes. The most common looked up one is the nurturer, which is really, really important. But there's also the fighter, the creator, the visionary, the leader, the teacher, the healer, the protector, I think I said fighter, the warrior. There's a whole bunch of them. And so the one I resonate most is with sort of the creator slash teacher slash visionary. So I do these sermons and I do these videos and I write blogs and I journal and I collect books, lots and lots of books. And I hope to further this knowledge to all other women and all other mothers to find their own way into the wild woman, great cosmic mother archetype, and how you want to lead the next generation and just the woman in your community, your social environment, your local land, your whatever it is around you, to return to the ways of the matriarchy, where we live in balance with each other and with nature. So here's a couple of questions for you. What mother archetype do you resonate with? Do you practice? What did you think of the readings I did today? My bookmark just fell out of my book, so I lost my place. Yeah, what readings did you like today? What did you think of it? Anything that resonated with you that comes out, please share in the comments. Please like and subscribe. You can visit my website at www.healingfromharm.com, where I offer trauma peer support, some worksheets, and some books that I sell in my store, including these two. And if you like what I did here, please donate to my PayPal, whatever you feel is worthy. YouTube does not allow for payment until I get 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to support me in a way until I reach that amount, I'll put my PayPal link down below, and you can donate some money. I really appreciate that. I think that's about it for today. I hope you have a great Mother's Day, and I hope, because it is springtime, you enjoy the rebirth of Mother Nature coming back to life after the hibernation of winter. So, take care, and I'll see you next time.